Today we're talking about the top 5 mistakes that all beginner producers make. Some intermediate producers may still be making these mistakes, but don't worry about it. We're here to correct them. I've made all these mistakes myself. There's no shame in it. Let's get right to it. Number 1, beginners need to reverse mortgage their home in order to buy a Dolby Atmos rig. Just kidding. Number 1 is actually you're not using a compressor correctly. You've probably seen a video on like how to use a compressor that was probably 20 minutes long on YouTube, and you watched the whole thing and you didn't glean anything from it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about serial compression. All that means is using 2 compressors in a row. Great example of this is if you have a vocal, you can look at a vocal right here. At the beginning of a word, usually there's a transient. So the front end of the word is a little bit louder than the rest of them. So different compressors do different things. That's why the mistake is that one person might put one compressor on to try to do too much work. This is why we need serial compression. So the first one right here, this is just gonna be a main compressor. Maybe we can think of like an 1176 style compressor is really good for this because it's fast. What fast means is it grabs that peak right away, that transient, it grabs it quick and it lets it go quick. It just brings it down to even it out. So you want the attack and the release set to, something pretty fast, all right? Now that just takes care of the transients, all right? Actually getting a good overall level of the sound is a different ballgame. So for that, we have another compressor. I like using optical compressors for this, right? So here's a great example of this. See how the attack and the release are much slower? So what that does, it makes a natural leveling of the sound. And then using these back to back actually has just kind of a way different, more natural sound that most people, I would say, would like in a mix. All right, now this is just for a vocal example, but this also works for all kinds of instruments and synths and plugins and everything like that. But another thing to remember is there's no right or wrong way to do it. I just think this is a traditional way that not a lot of beginners really think about. It's something I didn't use for a long time, using compressors in line. And in fact, like I said, this vocal was actually recorded with a hardware compressor going into it, so it wasn't even that bad. So we're just using a little compression, get rid of the transient, and then a little bit more compression to level all the sound throughout the entire track. Keep it consistent, and then add some presence to it. The second mistake all producers make when they're starting out is using too much reverb. This is something I made years and years into my career producing music and making videos and stuff like that. It's so easy. I love reverb so much. It's so easy to overuse it, and I don't realize it until after the fact. The number 1 reverb that people mess up the most is a plate reverb, okay? Really easy to go too hard on this. So on this vocal, I have the Arturia plate 140 on this. Look at the blend right here, okay? 0.011. That's about all the reverb I want to make it still sound like a voice and not like it's buried in some echo chamber deep underground under the ocean, all right? So having a small, assuming you're recording it in a pretty dry room, this is like the same thing with serial compression, serial reverbs into reverbs. Use a plate to just kind of make it sound like it's in a space that is pleasant. Open up that vocal a little bit, open up the top end, and then use another reverb if you want an effect on it, okay? I'm all about putting cool effects on vocals or any instrument, but I do think it sounds a lot better using a reverb into a reverb because that first one just kind of opens it up, and then the second one, it blooms into something, and it just sounds really cool without just affecting the entire original source signal in just a super muddy, terrible way that is indecipherable. It's gonna blow up your mix because all the frequencies are all over the place. Reverbs into reverbs, and then use less than you think, and you'll be happy later on. Mistake number 3, back your stuff up and back your projects up during mixes. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and for whatever reason, I had too much coffee, I was eating too much candy, and the mix I made it infinitely worse than it was when I started. So having versions of your mixes is something that is super easy to do. And then backing your stuff up, I know that you haven't backed your stuff up like you probably should. Look at yourself. Have you done it? Have you really? Well, guess what? That's why the sponsor of today's video is here to help you, Boombox.io. Boombox is the home of collaboration, so click the link in the description because you'll get 4 gigs of just space that you can use for a plethora of different things for free, which is more than everybody gives you nowadays, so you definitely want to get those 4 free gigabytes because those are going to come in handy. Some of the best parts about this is you can upload your files, quickly add collaborators, and get time-stamped feedback from other people about your track. You also have the ability to create professional playlists that you can share with whoever you like. And the nice thing about that is they get to listen to it on an actual slick looking interface instead of sending them the same stupid SoundCloud looking thing over and over again. So definitely get your boombox on. Number 4, using buses strategically. Now you may be using a bus for something else, maybe just to like put effects on one whole clump of tracks, but there's a lot of ways using a bus can quickly manage your workflow and make a lot of stuff easier. Here's a great example of it. So I have a bank of 4 different instruments right here, and they all kind of at the end of the song, they tail off at about the same time. You can see around here, they're all kind of fading away, but I want it clean. I know you've probably done this. You've probably opened up Automation, it's like, all right, let me draw this one down, and then let me zoom in, and let me get this one, and I want that to be the exact same thing. Or maybe I'll do it, and then I gotta go up here, and then I gotta do the same thing, and then that's gonna be it. And then it starts becoming a huge mess because you're automating single tracks. This is why a bus is gonna be so much more helpful. A lot of different ways you can do this in Logic, or really any DAW. I just kind of hit this little plus right here. It's gonna ask for a new audio input. I'm just gonna scroll all the way down, do a bus. I've already got some buses on here, so let's pick bus 23 to honor the great Michael Jordan. Gonna do that, and then anytime I need to, I can just send this to whichever bus I need. Right now it's on bus 2, so I'm gonna blow up my mix just to do an example of here. Gonna throw it to bus 23, I open up the fader for bus 23, and then I just automate that one fader down, and the automation for all those tracks is contained within it. So there's nothing that drives me crazier than having a bunch of automation working at the same time and then having to go back and like, oh wow, I decided to extend maybe like the bridge a few bars, and then it's like, oh shoot, do I want to drag that out of it? What was I doing there? Using buses is really gonna help strategically make your life a lot easier. And the 5th mistake that all beginners make is you're not using reference tracks early enough, okay? A lot of people think, and myself included, it's like, oh, I don't wanna copy somebody else's work. This is what you do. You gotta copy it. If you like the sound of something, drop that entire track into your project and then reference it by going back and forth between your mix and the track, and you will be amazed how much better you get at noticing certain things. It doesn't have to even sound anything like the arrangement or the production of your track, but just sonically. Hearing how your mix sits compared in an A-B scenario with something that you really like the sound of is so hugely important to getting your skills better quickly. And this is something that I didn't do forever. It's almost like, is the sheer laziness that I employed when I was doing this is really kind of like, I don't want to like drag another track in and then have to make like a bus of my mix and then just go back and forth between that and that. And then as soon as I started doing this, wouldn't you know, I'd be like, wow, this part doesn't really have any low end in this. It's like, oh, cool. You know, if you do have something that is kind of similar arrangement wise, that's even better, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be something you like the sound of, and then you'd be like, wow, it really seems like, you know, there's less high end in maybe this track than I originally thought. And then it's like, oh, cool. Then you get into like filters or maybe automating a filter on certain parts and kind of having different parts open up. And that's the kind of thing that I don't think you're gonna notice as much unless you're actually in the mix workflow and you're going back and forth between a reference track of something that you really like and then your own actual mix. Again, just do it. Just humor me one time and just do it. And then I think you're gonna be pleased with how the end result works. So those are 5 beginner mistakes that all people make when they're first starting out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of other mistakes that maybe I missed, because there's a lot of good ones. This is a safe place. Get it off your chest. There's no shame. We're all just learning. We're all getting better. We're all doing our best. And then sign up for Boombox, because there are so many cool tools that will help enable you become a better musician, a better producer, and to collaborate with other people that, you know, you'll make lifelong, impactful relationships with. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon.